Hi, everyone. I'm Amy Miller hopping on live today. I have a question for you. I want you to think about the last time that you reached for something that you knew wasn't actually going to serve you, wasn't actually going to make you feel better. Maybe it was the social media scroll or a glass of wine, or maybe saying yes to a project that you weren't really feeling like you actually had the bandwidth for. Sometimes it's just staying busy when that's actually not what's going to serve us. And the reason this topic is coming up today is because I found myself asking myself this question recently, where I was about to reach for something, and I paused myself and I got curious, and I said, do I actually want this thing? And then I took it a little bit deeper with more questions and more curiosity, and it led me to a greater awareness, which led me to better choices that I could make the next day to better serve myself and actually give myself what it is I need. And when we do that, when we better learn to one, acknowledge what it is that is meaningful to us, then we can better prioritize it. And then we can not only reach our goals faster, but we can also show up better for others in our lives, and including our teams. So that's what this conversation is about today. So if that sounds interesting or something that you find yourself dealing with, stay tuned, and I'll also give you a simple, actionable step that you can take today, as well as an activity. But first, let's talk a little bit more about the problem, because we can tend to think that we maybe have a discipline problem when we reach for the things, when we continue with the habits that we know are not serving us or not very good for us. We can put pressure on ourselves without really getting to the root. We can just say, well, I need to just do better, or I need to be more disciplined. But in my experience, and what I experienced the other day, is that it's not necessarily a discipline problem, but it's more about awareness. And what we're doing is we're trying to solve an emotional need when we reach for the thing that doesn't serve us, or the thing that does serve us. Whenever we are making a choice, it comes back to an emotion, something that we want to feel or that we want to stop feeling. So when we reach for the thing that's maybe not what we actually want, we're trying to solve that emotional need without first understanding the emotional need. What is it that we actually need? What is it that we actually want? What is it that we actually want to feel? So we can reach for this thing that is actually a substitute that might seem like it's giving us temporary relief, but is it really? Because are you really feeling satisfied after you reach for the thing? So an example could be something big, like, you can have a successful career, but you can still feel restless. Well, why might that be? Because the career is not stimulating the feeling that is missing what you actually want to feel. Or something a little smaller, we can spend the whole weekend relaxing and then still feel anxious or depleted on Monday because we didn't engage in the activities that truly relax us, or whatever the feeling is that we wanted. We didn't engage in activities that stimulate that feeling. And there's research that talks about this or backs this up as well. There's something called self-determination theory, and it talks about three core physiological needs, and they are autonomy, so needing to feel like we have agency, like we have a choice, like we have control. And competence is the second one. We need to feel capable, like we're making an impact, like we're making progress, we're capable of achieving the goal that we're working toward. And then the third is we need to feel relatedness. We need to feel connected to ourselves and to others. And when these needs go unmet, well, then we reach for something to fill that gap. And when these needs are met, well, we naturally feel more energized, more motivated, more engaged, and we operate with more persistence in working toward our goals. And then there's also research on emotional regulation that talks about how our habits are not necessarily about the behavior, but our habits are about attempts to change how we feel. So an example might be if you're feeling stressed or overwhelmed, maybe you reach for the social media scroll, something to relax your brain, to get your mind off of the problem. Or if you're feeling a bit lonely, maybe you do some shopping. Or if you're feeling anxious, well, let me just check my email again. So the behavior isn't the goal. The goal is the emotion that we want to feel. But without first identifying what the emotion is and then taking it further by asking yourself, okay, well, how can I stimulate that emotion through an intrinsic motivator? Well, then we're unlikely to solve the problem through the action that we're reaching for, because it's not the answer. It's not the real solution. So first you have to identify what it is you want to feel, how it is you want to feel, and then take it further. Okay, well, what activities stimulate that? And you know the answer because you felt that feeling before. That's how you know what it is you're reaching for. But I thought this was a pretty cool realization, and I'll share an example, a couple of examples I'll talk through to get curious about, okay, well, wait a minute, do I really want this thing that I'm reaching for? Actually, I don't think I do. So what is it that I do want? And then, okay, well, why am I not feeling the way that I want to feel? You know, what is missing? And then when you become aware of what that is, well, then you can just work to incorporate activities that stimulate that emotion. And then you feel more fulfilled and you feel more motivated, and then you show up better for yourselves and others. So I'll share an example of what I experienced the other day. So I'd had a pretty full day. I was busy all day. I felt tired at the end of the day, and I like to feel tired at the end of the day. I would imagine that we all likely do. We want to feel like I like to go to sleep feeling like I left nothing on the table, mentally and physically. I had a good workout, and I worked on the goals that I'm prioritizing. And so the other day, I was feeling, I was about to reach for a glass of wine at the end of the day. And then I realized, I don't think that I actually want this, but I want something. So what is it that I'm wanting? And so I paused and I asked myself, instead of, and this is a question that you can ask yourself, instead of what can I reach for, what emotion is it that I'm wanting to feel? What emotion am I searching for? And I did that, maybe not exactly in those words. And I realized it only took a moment. I want to feel satisfied. That's the emotion that I'm searching for. And so the glass of wine is not going to help me to feel satisfied. And then I got even more curious and I said, okay, but why don't I feel satisfied? Because I had a full day. So that I was busy all day, but why don't I feel satisfied? And then I realized, oh, well, my day was off balanced. I invested a lot of time and energy in this part of my work and my business, but this part didn't get enough attention. It got a little, but not enough. So now I feel off balance and a bit unfulfilled, not unhappy necessarily, but I'm noticing that I don't feel satisfied. Okay, so with this awareness, knowing that the thing that I'm reaching for is not going to give me the feeling, and knowing what the feeling is that I'm searching for, and then how to get that feeling, well, then tomorrow I can make different choices and I can feel more satisfied at the end of the day. But I think a lot of times we have habits that we are just used to choosing, or we haven't stopped and taken a moment to get curious about, well, wait a minute, what is it that I'm actually feeling here? Because without first identifying the emotion that you're feeling that you don't want, well, then you can't identify the feeling that you do want, and then you can't take it further to identify, okay, well, these things stimulate that feeling, so I can just choose more of this tomorrow and moving forward, and then not only feel happier and more satisfied at the end of the day, but this is also, when we feel happier, we're more present, and then we're better able to access our logical reasoning thinking and think of ideas and solutions to our challenges in other areas of our lives. So this little exercise can help in more ways than just feeling better at the end of the day. So I invite you, next time you notice yourself reaching for something that maybe isn't actually going to give you the feeling that you want, stop and ask yourself, okay, what is it that I'm actually craving? I do this with my diet a lot because I'm very intentional with my health and my nutrition. So I pay a lot of attention to, wait a minute, what is it that my body actually needs right now? Because we can eat something that we didn't need and then we're not going to feel satisfied, and then you still have the problem, the deficiency, nutrient deficiency, or whatever it is. So I do this a lot with my diet and my health, and including my workouts. Well, today my body is needing this. Maybe I planned to go for a run in the park, but actually need something gentler. So maybe I'll do a swim or yoga. But you can do this with other areas of your life as well, and it'll carry over into your work life. So pause and ask yourself, okay, what is it that I'm actually craving? And it may not the object that you're reaching for, but the feeling. Remember, we make our choices based off of our feelings. And then you can make new choices, and your choices create your circumstances, and your circumstances are your life. So you can have that awareness that you have the ability to create more of the life that you want. And I designed an exercise years ago, and it's called Identify Your Drivers. So I did this first for myself, and then I do it with my coaching clients, and also in the workshops that I do as well. And it's similar to what we're talking about here. When you understand what drives you, because I find that most people have 2 or 3 emotional drivers that consistently help us to feel like our authentic selves. And when we're not doing those things, well, then we feel like something is missing, and then we're going to reach for something to fill that gap. So, for example, if you like to be creative, like I'll use some of my examples because they're top of mind. I like to be creative. I like to write. I like to make content. And so if I don't have enough time doing that, if a lot of time has gone by where I'm not doing that, I'm not going to feel as fulfilled. But when I am doing that, taking time to prioritize what is meaningful to me, what makes me feel like my authentic self, well, then I'm more energized also to get the things done that I maybe have to get done, but they don't light me up as much. So there's so much value in identifying what your drivers are. And drivers could be emotions, they could be activities, but they stimulate feelings that help you to feel like your authentic self. So maybe you're someone that likes adventure. Maybe you like to do some races that others would find maybe too exhausting, or maybe even a little bit dangerous. Maybe you thrive on that kind of excitement. Maybe it's freedom. That's another one of mine. I like to feel free. And so if I'm in an environment or a situation or not doing enough activities that help me stimulate that feeling, well, then I'm going to feel like something is lacking. And then I'm maybe more inclined, and the research says so as well, that we're more inclined to reach for things to fill the gap, fill the void when we're missing something, when we're not feeling fulfilled. So ask yourself, when you feel even just a little bit unsatisfied, it could be a very uncomfortable feeling, it could be a little feeling, big or small, when you're feeling a little unsettled or unsatisfied, ask yourself, what's the feeling that I'm chasing? What feeling do I want to be feeling right now? It's likely the opposite of how you're feeling if you're feeling in not a positive emotion. And then take it further and ask yourself, okay, well, what activity naturally creates that feeling? And then ask yourself, okay, so you take it a little bit further, and it only takes just a matter of minutes. Well, how can I give myself 1 hour of that this week? And then remember, we don't get more of what we don't take. So if you want a career, for example, that you love, that really helps you to feel fulfilled, and you know the things that help you to feel fulfilled, and you don't choose them even for 1 hour each week, well, you're not going to get 3 hours a day, and definitely not a full work day of doing the things that help you feel like your authentic self. So we have to choose the life that we want before we're not just handed the life that we want. We have to choose it by making small choices in small moments. And I'll share another example. About a year and a half or so ago, I was feeling very stressed, really overwhelmed and stressed, and had a lot of work. So not all bad, but I didn't like how I was feeling. and I was heading to the grocery store to run an errand, and I noticed how stressed I was feeling, and I noticed how I was rushing, and I just felt like I was pushing, like I was dodging people on the street. And okay, so why was I doing this? Because I felt stressed. And what was so because I felt stressed, my habit or action that I chose was to push harder, to move faster. Why? So that I would feel less stressed, so that I could get back home and get more work done. Why? So that I could be relaxed, and what was going to help me feel relaxed? Well, to finish all of my things. Well, there's always more to do. And I realized in that moment, you know what? What I asked myself, what is it that I'm wanting? And I said, I just want to feel more leisurely. I want to go to the store without feeling and run my errands with some peace and not feel so much stress and pressure. And I thought, okay, well, I can say, okay, well, once I achieve this, or once I do X or make X amount of money, well, then I will relax. But I realized that's not going to happen. Life doesn't work that way. So then I thought, and this all happened in just a matter of seconds or a couple of minutes as I was walking to the store. And I said, okay, well, how am I going to make this change? How am I going to feel relaxed and more leisurely? Because this is the way that I had been operating for a really long time, like probably at least a decade. So I finally stopped long enough to pause and notice, well, how I was feeling and the actions that I was choosing and how I wanted to feel. And that if I wanted to feel that way, I was going to have to choose a different action. I wasn't just going to be given something that was going to help me then feel the way I wanted to feel. I had to choose it by making a different choice. And so I chose in that moment to slow down. I said, okay, if you want to slow down and run your errands in a relaxed way and not feel so much stress, well, then you're just going to have to choose to do that right now, not wait for it to just happen, not choose it after you get here. And so I slowed down. And yes, it felt uncomfortable. I felt some stress and pressure there because I still had the pile of work at home, but I just chose to move slower on that errand. And then then I kept choosing that. And then I ended up making a really big life change and choosing to pick up and actually move to a different atmosphere where I felt more relaxed. And so this is how, just this awareness, not that everybody has to make a big drastic move like that. You'll know what's right for you. But this awareness started, it happened throughout the course of my life in different moments. And then the driver's exercise I shared, I developed years ago, but it's all connected to the idea that the choices that we make are based on emotions, and without identifying how it is we really want to feel and what gives us that emotion, what truly stimulates that emotion, we can't acknowledge what it is we truly need. And then we can't make choices that are actually aligned with that. But once you do, stop and slow down and get curious about, okay, well, wait a minute, how am I feeling? Okay, well, why am I feeling like this? What's missing? All right, well, what can I choose that typically gives me that emotion that I'm looking for? And then you can make that choice consistently over time. So if you haven't identified your own drivers, I invite you to do that. Again, your drivers are emotions and or activities that help you feel like your authentic self. And maybe in your role, you can find ways to incorporate some of those things. Maybe it's a job redesign. Maybe it's having a conversation with your team or your manager. Hey, I really light up when I'm doing this, and I feel like I could bring this to the team and help in this way. Maybe now's not the time for you to do that. Maybe it is. You'll know what's right for you. But I always encourage people to focus on what you can do, not what you can't do. So if you don't have 3 hours a week to focus on what drives you, what makes you feel like your authentic self, well, what do you have? Do you have 1 hour a week? And you want to choose at least 1 hour a week because you have to start somewhere. Like I had to start somewhere by choosing to walk slowly to the grocery store and not move down the street like a linebacker dodging everybody, because that wasn't actually making me feel good. It wasn't making me feel relaxed. The action I was choosing was producing the opposite emotion. So I had to choose a different action, even when it was uncomfortable. So yes, it will be uncomfortable if you're not in the habit yet of making time for your drivers. Like whenever I first started making videos, it felt uncomfortable because I felt like, well, I should be doing this. So it is uncomfortable at first, but you're not going to get more of what you don't take. So I encourage you to pay attention to how you're feeling, even in those small moments where you feel just somewhat unsettled. Get curious about that, how you're feeling, why you're feeling that way, what you actually want to feel, and what activities stimulate that emotion. So then with that awareness, you can choose it. And if you might like some help uncovering what your drivers are, we could do that together through one-on-one coaching. And I also offer workshops. So you can reach out to me, send me a message, or check out amyleemiller.com for more information. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week. Mondays, 2 p.m. Today's Tuesday, but hopefully next week I'll be back on Mondays. I'll see you then.